Pasadena today. We're getting ready early because there's going to be a morning tour of missing middle housing in Pasadena. They're cleaning up at the hotel. So we're doing a tour in the early morning of missing middle housing in Pasadena, and then we'll be also visiting some of the fire sites in Altadena and studying the rebuilds there. There's a lot of housing topics that overlap with the fire rebuilds, so it should be really interesting. Last 2 years ago, we were in San Diego and visited the bonus ADUs, which are very controversial there. And it was a really good way to see the thing in situ and kind of come up with your own opinion. We're all advocates for more housing, but we kind of land on different parts of the spectrum and have different views on how to best apply that housing. And so having people who all have the good intention of creating housing, but differing views on how housing is applied has always been really fascinating. And somehow there's always a controversy around the corner. I'm kind of alluding to one, but you probably don't follow it as closely as I do. In Altadena and the Palisades in particular, which suffered these devastating fires earlier this year, the rebuild has been accelerated in some ways with streamlined permitting processes and executive orders from the mayor of Los Angeles for the Palisades and the governor to cover the county of Los Angeles, which is where Altadena is. And those executive orders have streamlined some things, and that's a positive thing. At the same time, there's these statewide preemption laws, what we call, it's like the ADU rules, where the whole state can use this one set of rules, and cities can't really object to it outside of certain conditions. The way those statewide preemption rules work, they're very broad brush, right? And some people are not a big fan of how those statewide rules are going to be applied in the fire rebuilds. And so now there have been new executive orders that exempt those areas from the statewide rules passed by our legislature. This is super controversial, and I don't want to get into who's right and who's wrong, and I'm still having that conversation with friends and peers. What I will say is it's super important to talk to real homeowners who are affected by these issues. It's super important to not set precedent. Even if I agree with the individual executive order, for example, you might not want to give the power to any governor in the future to make an exemption to any rule that the legislature passes. Just as an example, we have executive examples in every state and the national level to think about of what setting that precedent means. And I would also say the housing movement, we don't always have to win. I think it's okay to have a nuanced conversation and get to a good place about this specific debate. And it'll be a great opportunity to actually visit the sites and see them in situ. I hope we get to talk to some real homeowners. I've had the opportunity to interview a few for another project I'm working on, and thanks to Andrew Slocum for introducing me to those homeowners. And it's been really moving talking to the real people who were affected and displaced by these fires. So that was a heavy way to start this video, but it's a really heavy topic, and so we'll be visiting these sites and kind of taking it in, and the last thing that's really important to keep in mind when you're deciding who's right about how we proceed on the SB 9 exemption in the fire rebuilds, I think, is to go, are we treating everybody equally? It would be crazy, in my opinion, to exempt the Palisades, for example, but not exempt Pasadena. And if you start seeing inequalities like that in how we apply the rules, it reminds us a lot of all the times in our history where communities that are wealthy get special, different treatment, and communities that are less affluent get another kind of treatment. So those are always set off alarm bells. That's a bit of a guardrail for me. Anyway, that's all the stuff we're juggling while we do that. On a more upbeat note, yesterday was hours and hours of people talking about housing policies, housing wins across the nation, and an unusual number of people asked if I was going to make a video. So I am making a video to summarize some of what we talked about. And it is housing policy, it's not ADU specific stuff. But although it's the Casita Coalition, so it's very ADU focused. Missing middle includes ADUs and other, basically everything between a big single family home and a big apartment building we call missing middle, because we sort of stopped building it around the 1970s. And in a lot of places made it completely illegal to build. So that's what Missing Middle is about. And the convening a couple of years ago, it was like this cool moment where we had gotten a lot of momentum in California, and suddenly this convening brought together all these people from around the country who are about to try to do the same thing in their parts of the country, or who had just done something different in their parts of the country. And we were all learning from each other, and it felt like, oh, something's about to happen. That was 2 years ago. And now we're meeting, and it does feel like a lot happened. It feels like a lot of us have had victories. Some of us have had challenges and setbacks, but there are incredible innovations rolling out in missing middle housing across the country. Right now, there's actually a bipartisan bill in Congress coming out of the Senate that is remarkable in some of the changes it would make. Super wonky, and it's not passed yet, so I don't want to bore you with all the details, but like they would mean gigantic changes for the way we think about financing ADUs and other big changes. But obviously, I will talk a lot about Title I if we get that bill, because it's going to just change so much about accessory dwelling units, and there'll be an opportunity for normal people to write into the federal government and be like, hey, you have to do it XYZ if you want me to use this new law, because regulators don't always have a good sense of how much things cost, and real homeowners writing in and being like, I need this to be like A, B, and C in order to build my ADU. That's very helpful. So we'll do that when it comes. And then the talks were, I'm just gonna start rambling. So if you have questions, pop them in the chat. And it could be about anything. I can talk about ADUs or your project, but I'm just gonna recap this while I'm sitting here. So yeah, the Casita Coalition, in part, this is educating people who are in housing or are supporters of housing, but they don't know a lot about ADUs. So they put out like these informational brochures and stuff that are like, hey, we're building 137,000 ADUs, we're permitting 137,000 ADUs in California. And like, here's the stats on missing middle housing. Then, that's a great contextualizer for groups like Wells Fargo that sponsors us, but do they know the impact that their funding has for the Casita Coalition? It's important to kind of show, wow. And then at the same time, advocates are diving into a deeper level of detail. So Eli Spivak from Oregon, he was talking about how Portland now, you can buy missing middle housing. It's not missing anymore, they found it. They passed a bunch of rules, developers built, and now there are middle housing, like townhome options in really nice parts of Portland that are a couple $100,000 cheaper than a single family home. And they are, real starter homes, real opportunities for people to live in. And it's everything. It's not just ADUs, it's tinies, it's cottage courts, it's all kinds of wonderful things, right? It's happened in Portland, and so we could do that in other parts of the country, even where it's very expensive. And thanks to Portland going first, we kind of know what works best. Also, just with a little bit more history, before all this advocacy happened, there was a lot of displacement because of the way development worked in Portland, and what people talk about gentrification. I say displacement because it's moving people out of their homes. That's something that we can avoid if we build more housing fast, because we can get affordable housing, high quality housing in the places where people want to live, and that's what avoids displacement. And then if we do it, oh, hey, how's it going? That was Celeste from the Casita Coalition. So you see them setting up early, right? Everybody's working hard. So what else? In that same panel, it was super interesting. We heard about how, I think it was Kentucky, has these things called horizontal property regimes. And like, we're learning all these like wonky ways that different states handle housing, or different ways that advocates and developers have found, like, hey, did you know that if we call it a horizontal property regime, we can do basically lot splits? Like we could build these long, narrow homes and build two more affordable homes where we would have only been able to pencil one giant house before. XD from Orlando, hey, how's it going? Thanks for saying hi. It means a lot. Like sometimes I'm just babbling to the screen, right? In the lobby of a Hilton while people set up for a conference. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm happy to talk about anything. But right now I'm babbling about the convening that I'm at, Missing Middle Housing Convening in San Diego, where we're talking about how to build more affordable housing in that category between massive single family houses and massive apartment buildings. There's like, hey, what about an ADU? What about a duplex? What about a little cottage cluster? What about a tiny home? So what else? There was a condo attorney who's been on the channel, Julie Alexander. She's awesome, and she's done like thousands of ADU condos in Austin, Texas, where rents are stable or decreasing, and it's largely due to how much they've opened up the ability to build there. She wasn't on a panel, but one of the planning commissioners from Austin who organized YIMBY Town last year, where we got to have a panel, she was here too, and so talking to the Texans about their victories has been really fun as well. And then, we also talk about some of the challenges we still face in innovation. So like one of the big things is how do we pay for ADUs? So we talked a lot about the grants, we talked a lot about other types of lending vehicles, and like that's really interesting to me because I'm kind of seeing who's working on stuff that I didn't realize, oh, okay, we can go advocate. And so a lot of the time, I walk up to these people, these advocates who are deep in the weeds in Washington, D.C., talking to Fannie and Freddie about loan options and advocating for change. And I don't realize that they're doing that if I don't come to events like this. So as soon as they're done talking, I run up and I'm like, hey, if you ever need the public to comment and let the government know how they should change a policy, we are a grassroots channel, right? Like I can go do a video, you guys are a great audience, you'll write in, you'll email, and we'll sign petitions, and we can actually affect change like we did last year on that FHFA loan, or FHFA advisory on the Freddie product that came out last year. That made a big difference. XD says, love the ADU option for my aging father. Yeah, that's exactly right. When we talked about how people are using the 137,000 ADUs that have been permitted in California so far, a huge percentage of them are being used for the aging parent who needs care or needs a home and you don't want to send them off on their own. They still want some independence. ADUs are a great option. Sometimes it's the aging parent who builds the ADU for themselves, moves into the ADU, and then the kids take the big house because there's all these vacant bedrooms in the big house, right? And that allows for that maintained independence still. And then the other thing we see a lot of is that example, the boomerang kids who, if you want to live in California, in the community where you grew up, it's so hard. It's so hard right now. And so if you're lucky enough that your parents own property and they have the budget or the equity in their house to build a second home on the same property, then we're creating these multi-generational situations. So that is exactly what they're being used for, XD. I hope that the ADU option works out for you and your dad. Gurvinder, thank you for going live. Yeah, my pleasure. I love it. Thanks for tuning in. It's one of these things where I do a lot of conferences like this, but I normally don't talk about them. I record them for myself, but it's not entertaining enough to do a broad appeal YouTube video. But I'd say 7 people asked me if I was doing a video about this specific conference. I thought, well, maybe I should at least do a live stream. So if people have questions, then I can, oh, perfect, Govinda. How was yesterday, the ADU condo breakout session? I didn't go to the condo breakout, but I did sit on the plenary, the panel that included ADU condos. And I hang out with Julie, who is the speaker, a lot. She's a friend. And the ADU condo stuff is so fascinating. Oh, and I also met the mayor of West Hollywood. Chelsea. It has adopted ADU condos in West Hollywood. And so it's been really cool. It's been awesome talking to all these people who have done thousands of ADU condos like Julie, or talk to the mayor who got that done in West Hollywood. and very inspiring. The bottom line on that is there are lots of jurisdictions that have adopted it. I actually have a list here. San Jose, Santa Cruz, Berkeley, San Diego, West Hollywood, Santa Monica, and San Francisco are all on the path or have already adopted them. And then when those cities get through the process, and San Jose's already got 2. KQED actually just put out a great article about the ADU condos. It's not related to the conference, but Aaron Baldessari did an amazing piece talking about the first 2 ADU condo projects in San Jose. And as you see those condo projects finish and hit the market, cities are all gonna realize the sky didn't fall, and realtors are gonna realize, whoa, that's a nice listing. And there's gonna be more and more advocacy for other jurisdictions to adopt AB 1033. So Casita Coalition's got a little toolkit that they put together. I can link to that. And then also I've got my template that I used with a bit more like ABCs about how to actually advocate for stuff at City Council. We could talk about that now too if you want. But it's basically, people, if you've never done it before, you'd be shocked at how like human scale it is to get a city to adopt it. Especially if you know some people in the city. But my advice, I'm gonna filter it a little bit, but my advice is you actually have to tell the city, and that's an easy thing to do. You can just send in a letter before a city council meeting, and sometimes that's all it takes. And somebody on the city council likes your letter and they run with it. And I have template letters. And I never say ADU condo in the template letter. I talk about starter homes, because every elected official I've met in California understands that their community does not have enough starter homes. There's too much competition for starter homes. And so if they can go to their voters in their town and say, I have a plan to create more starter homes, that is a very popular message. If you tell them, oh, we want to condoize ADUs, they're like, condos sound terrible. ADUs, we already have ADUs. Like, what are you talking? They just don't even want to listen a lot of the time. So I talk about starter homes. And the Casita Coalition, again, has a whole kit about this messaging part. And I have that template letter, which I will put in the description when I get back home. So for the ADU condo stuff, you then, after you send the email, that's the least you can do, right? What I recommend is also going to a city council, and there is a section usually called non-agenda items. And so if you show up early, like just 10 minutes early, you tell the staff that you want to speak to a non-agenda item. Sometimes you fill out a card. And they usually do that pretty early in the meeting, so you don't have to sit through the whole thing. They like announce the meeting, do the roll call, maybe a pledge of allegiance or something. Sometimes they announce things or declarations of gratitude. There's a lot of different like formalities, but it all happens very quickly. And then they usually go to public comment on non-agenda items very early. So you can usually be out in like, you show up 10 minutes early, sometimes you're out within 20 minutes, and that's like a good half hour well spent. You speak for like a minute to 3 minutes, depending on how many people there are. And you kind of want to tell them your name, that you live there, or if you don't live there, that you work there or wish you could live there. But it's most powerful when you're literally a voter. You tell them your name, that you live there, and you give them your personal story in a way that they can relate to a lot of people in your community. And at the same time, you want to say, there's this really amazing opportunity to create a lot more starter homes. The state isn't forcing people to do it, but it's given us the opportunity to do it. And it's a bill called AB 1033. I really hope that you'll direct staff to just study this bill and what it would be like to adopt it in our city. That's all. You're not asking for them to pass a rule. You're just asking them to devote some staff time to studying this bill. And even that takes some time because of the way cities work, but that's the ask. And it maybe you send the email, you show up to one city council meeting, take half an hour, and that's a lot. You might really get the ball rolling. If you want to do extra work, a lot of the time, you can't. City councilors aren't allowed to make up their mind ahead of the meeting. They have to they have to hear it in public, it has to be on the agenda, and then they have to hear public input, staff input. They have to do everything in public, and they're supposed to make their decision after receiving all that input. They also can't all meet together. As soon as there's like 2 of them or 3 of them, I forget, there's like a limit on how many of them can assemble without it being a public meeting. And that's the Brown Act is what it's called in California. So when there's stuff happening like that, to avoid problems, to avoid that kind of issue, but to advocate for your cause, what you can do is set up one-on-one meetings with city council members. And you just email them. They usually have an address online, and you say, hey, I'm a constituent, or I work here in your district, blah, 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 and I'd love to chat with you for 10, 15 minutes. I'll wrap up the AD stuff, and then I'll get to your question about financing. I want to chat for 10, 15 minutes. Do you have time? And if you can get the majority of city councilors, not to commit to saying yes, because they're not allowed to, but to say, like, that sounds like an interesting idea, just devoting some staff time to this. I look forward to you coming and speaking, and then we'll deliberate in front of everybody, right? That's usually the outcome. They aren't supposed to give you a commitment, and they shouldn't. So if you can get a bunch of them to kind of pre-understand that it's a good idea, then it's much easier for them to talk about it, because they have the confidence that you've done the rounds and you've helped prepare the conversation without breaking any rules. Okay, any tips from yesterday about financing? How can the average Joe build generational wealth? Yeah. So this was probably the most important business card I got. It's already like locked away in my suitcase. I can't just show it to you. The guy, I remember one of them was named Frank, and the other one, oh geez, it's not gonna be helpful. I'll make a video about this for sure. But there were probably 4 different giant takeaways about financing. One is that there are some people thinking very creatively about the to-loan process and different ways to finance projects more commercially. They sometimes involve hard money. So creative ways to use hard money, and this is not something I recommend to a first-timer first of all, this isn't financial advice. You need to have a financial advisor give you financial advice. I'm just a YouTuber, right? But for my case, and for people who do a lot of investment, I think for people who know their stuff, hard money is a very interesting first option, because as soon as you're done with a project, you refinance and you get out of that. So that was one of the big takeaways in that breakout. Another one is that some people are looking really creatively at, again, this is not for everybody, second position reverse mortgages. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. If you can get so a reverse mortgage is a mortgage where you don't have to pay each month, and the balance, instead of the balance going down over time as you pay off the principal, the balance goes up in a way. That's what makes it a reverse. That's a generalization. Research this stuff. And be careful, because a lot of people who take bad reverse mortgage products end up unexpectedly losing a very large asset in their family. So it's not for that. However, somebody like me, I wonder what kind of rates are available to me, because well, I won't get into all my personal details, but it's very interesting to think I could get a second position, no payment mortgage, and depending on what the tie-ins are, like what the early payment setup is, that might be really interesting way to take equity out of a home without touching my primary, which is a really good rate. A third takeaway is that there is a developing movement for a secondary market for second position loans. That's really complicated, right? But basically, everybody's got a really great mortgage rate right now, because if you bought during that epic low period, you've got like a 2% to 5% rate, and you're never gonna get out of it. You're gonna hold on to that baby as long as you can, right? And so the only good options for financing development, rehab, or ADUs are second position mortgages. the rules around what Fannie and Freddie will buy in second positions are hard, and they're highly regulated. There is a whole global financial system that is interested in investing in those products, but they need data. And so two real interesting advocacy things. One is that people are pushing Fannie and Freddie to actually look at those products. And the other is that there's a cool startup that a guy from HUD who is a real housing guy. He was an appointee, so he's not in the current administration, and he is now working on a project called Build Trust that's going to build trust in these second position products. He's going to collect data about all these ADU loans and create, and eventually, I guess, bundle them and sell them on the secondary market, or find buyers on the secondary market. This is so wonky, but what that means is like the lenders who have good second position products, because they cannot sell those products to Fannie and Freddie, they have to keep them on their books. They're what's called portfolio loans. And a bank needs to have a certain amount of money in its coffers for every portfolio dollar it lends out, right? And so to actually give those really good second position mortgages, there's a cap on how much they can do in-house and keep on their books. And that's why it's always small regional banks, and they have very small lending pools for that kind of product. If this works, and they can sell that loan on the secondary market, bundle it, right? Then that frees their capital up, and they get to reinvest in new projects. And so it creates a cycle, and you can suddenly invest in a lot more development. So that would be very exciting. So right now, Govinda, I'd say the two things that I'm gonna Google when I get home, I'm gonna look up what the second position reverse mortgage rates would be like for somebody my age. Because that's such an unusual thing. Like normally I think of it as a product for older homeowners who do not have inheritors, but maybe there's something there for me. And then the other thing I'm gonna look up is I'm gonna call these guys, and because I'm particularly interested in commercial adaptive reuse. So there's a bunch of laws that let you buy an abandoned strip mall with like all bad cheap tenants or vacancies and convert it into residential. There's a lot of rules that let you do that now, but the financing is terrible. So I found some cool vacant commercial stuff near mass transit in Vallejo. But then when I go to my lender, they're like, Ryan, this isn't a house. I can't give you your normal, FHA, or I can't do the normal home mortgage. It's commercial property. So we evaluate it based on the commercial tenants, and there are no tenants, which is why I want to buy it. It's like, this is worthless, and so I should get it. And then the bank is like, no, this is worthless. You can't buy this. And so that's a problem. But these hard money guys, they think about it differently. They understand what I'm going to do. And so, if I can get the project done and dusted fast enough to get out of that hard money, maybe there's something there. So those are the two things I'll look up right away when I get home. Reverse mortgage, second position, and some hard money. Specifically these creative hard money guys who are specialists in missing middle housing. They get what we're up to. What's the other piece of that? And then the other two are the advocacy ones, which are longer, but I've got some big ideas, so keep an eye on it. So hopefully that answers your question, Govinda. Thank you for the multiple questions too. Like honestly, we just sit through several hours of these panels, and so my head is full. I've got all these notes, and it helps a lot to have questions to kind of guide me. I alluded to it earlier, but there's a bill right now in Congress that would have this really small change to a thing called Title I. And Title I has two parts. It has a thing that's about manufactured housing, and it has a thing that's about rehabbing your house, renovating. And the cap on the amount for the renovation project loan was set in 1970 or whatever. And so it's like $30,000, I want to say. It's real low, 25K, 35K. And it's forgotten because it's like an unused tool. And I remember last year, Julie Felsman, who appeared on the channel, she alluded to it and was like, well, if we fix this, actually, like that's kind of devastating. It would be awesome. Because if we passed a law that said we could update that, we could make that a real amount, and suddenly we could use these Title I products on ADU renovation, rehab stuff. And I was like, okay, well, that sounds interesting, but I haven't heard anything since then. And it's actually in the bill that came out of the Senate. So if it stays in and the House gets it through, that could be game changing, and it'll just happen like that, and there'll be a video, right? That would be a big one. I'm kind of going through some of my notes, which creates, so yeah, that would create new ADU specific loan limits, and we could have a second lien program on the property improvement side of Title I. I already talked about Build Trust, which I'm super excited about. Apparently the Mortgage Bankers Association is working on a secondary market for ADU second position loans, which again means that we'd have a lot more products, innovation, if Fannie and Freddie were buying second position loans. There's a thing about banks using CRA to buy seconds, and CRA is community reinvestment allocations or something like that. It's a special, it's like a requirement that banks, I'm gonna mess this up. I think CRAs are like when regional banks have to invest some of that money in their community, and they often do it through affordable housing investments. I think that's what it is, but there were a lot of acronyms. Sometimes I gotta go back home and research this stuff. There's another finance one. There's some condo deposit research coming out soon that California YIMBY, it was Mohammed Almin, was talking about it, and he said he's not sure where it's gonna get published yet, but that'll be really exciting. Because this is a thing that exists everywhere in the world that we just don't have in the US, where a bunch of normal people, back to the question about average Joes building wealth, a bunch of normal people get together and chip in to a big building. And so you don't just build the building on spec and then turn around and sell the condo units at a big margin. Instead, a bunch of, like, if there's 6 condos stacked, you get 6 prospective condo owners to come together, finance the build, and then they get it at cost in a way, which is interesting. So much, gosh. The Freddie Mac Builder Council is like so Freddie Mac's spending more time talking to actual general contractors, which is nice. Yeah, those are some of the highlights from that finance breakout. I think that covers the question. I think I got everything in there. Well, hopefully that was helpful, Govinder. Thanks again for the question. So yeah, other than that, it's been a really exciting session. Like I said, people have asked for the video, so I'm making the video. If you want to know more about stuff like this, if you're nerdy enough to think this video is interesting, thank you for the hearts. If you're nerdy enough to think this video is interesting, honestly, you might want to join Casita Coalition, because get the news straight from the source. You don't have to go through me. They do events like this. We have a monthly industry meetup online. There's just a lot going on, and I don't put that on the channel because it's like it's like this video. It's way too in the weeds. If you're still watching this video, probably want to be a member of Casita Coalition. Yeah, that's all I can say. Because then you can come to the event yourself, and meet people between the panels, which is the most important part, right? It's like, it's one thing to learn everything that's being presented, and it's another thing to run up and say, hey, I want to be involved. I want to help. How do I help you? And that's how, hey, I wasn't in housing 5 years ago, and now I get to do this on like this special little part of the ecosystem, and I'm so grateful that I get to do it. So thank you for everybody for, oh, that's so cool. So, one of my friends has texted and said that she sees I'm live here. Oh, that's sweet. Thanks for watching. So I'm gonna hop off. If you have any questions when the video is not live, pop them in the comments. I can certainly follow up or link to more resources at Casita Coalition. And yeah, thanks for your interest. Thanks for watching, and I hope we all get to build some housing.